Hi everyone, I'm Roberta and I'm a coach at the ADHD Advocate. Welcome to week 1 of our ADHD Empowerment Month LinkedIn Lives. Apologies for my voice, I have a cold. Hopefully I will make it through this presentation. If you have any questions about the talk, please do post them in the comment section. And we will be hosting a Q&A on the 1st of November to address all of your questions collectively. So today, I talk about the impact of an ADHD diagnosis on our sense of self and sense of identity. What does it mean to receive a diagnosis of ADHD? What it means for our self-esteem, but also for the way we think about ourselves, the way we understand ourselves, our identity really. And this is a topic that comes up a lot in conversation with clients, especially those who've been diagnosed recently as adults. But it is also a topic that is central to my academic research as a philosopher, because apart from being a coach, I am a researcher affiliated with the University of Tübingen in Germany. And in my research, I try to understand the interplay between neurodiversity model and the medical and psychiatric model of ADHD. So in this talk, I will wear both my hat as an ADHD coach and my researcher hat. And I will not wear any coat. People usually find that obtaining a diagnosis brings a lot of positives. It allows us to better understand ourselves and how our brain works, give us a sense of belonging within the ADHD community. It might help a lot with stop feeling misunderstood, confused, alone, isolated, and it helps a lot stopping blaming ourselves. A lot of people who go through the diagnosis finally become able to replace self-compassion and understanding, with self-compassion and understanding a lot of negative labels that they've been given throughout their life and that they've internalized. So they are able to stop feeling stupid, lazy, bad-tempered, aggressive, crazy, or whatever other negative judgment they heard so much repeatedly during their experience, and understand them in a more compassionate way. And while doing that, embrace all the positive traits that are associated with ADHD, like humor, creativity, curiosity, resilience, a strong sense of justice, ability to think outside the box, being great in crisis, being enthusiastic and passionate, just to mention a few of those features that are often recognized by a lot of people as their strengths that are linked to their ADHD. But what we see a lot as coaches and what I feel is more empowering and impactful is that thanks to diagnosis and often thanks to coaching too that people do as a result of diagnosis, people finally learn to love themselves for who they are, to embrace themselves, and finally discover the true selves. Like a lot of people tell us after coaching for a while with us that really the most transformative thing for them that coaching has enabled is that they found themselves, they stopped masking, and they really can be themselves. What an amazing thing. On top of these very transformative, very positive impacts of ADHD diagnosis, there are, of course, all the very practical advantages of it. Access to medication, support, accommodations at work or in one's studies. And these things are not only helpful in managing one's ADHD, but also any co-occurring conditions that might be present and that are prevalent in the ADHD population that can be better managed when one has the ADHD lens and have a broader, fuller picture. So for all these very positive aspects of the diagnosis, there are also downsides to it. And often a diagnosis comes with a lot of confusion, anguish, stigma, self-judgment, skepticism about one's diagnosis. And many of these downsides are deeply intertwined with the benefits and often dampens the benefit and make them feel bittersweet or really threaten to take them away from us. So the fact that we finally have access to support and we finally understand ourselves and we have finally work better and experience less difficulties and challenges in our life is often accompanied with sadness and anger over the last years prior to diagnosis, and really a sense of grief for the lost possibilities in one's life. And these are very important aspects that we often address with clients during coaching. And addressing those things and looking deeper at these feelings and embracing also the negative feelings to move forward is a key component to flourishing and success. But also there are other negative patterns, a way of thinking that come up with a diagnosis. For instance, if we start managing our conditions and thriving, thanks to our very hard work towards finding strategies that work for us, and maybe through medication and access to the support in the form of therapy and the form of coaching, at some point we might wonder whether we really have ADHD or whether we might not be imposters. Because of course, ADHDers feel like imposters about everything, so including having ADHD. So some people might start wondering whether they might not be faking the disorder to justify their laziness and the scatteredness, because these negative labels are very strong and very persistent. We've been hearing them all our life. We might even feel guilty for sucking out precious money from the limited resources of the healthcare system or the government if we ask for funding to accommodate us or for mental health support. And here's another source of tension and negative feeling that dampens our the positive value of the diagnosis, and is really intertwined with it. It is because of the diagnosis and because thanks to the diagnosis we are put into the medical system that we might decide to take medications to manage our ADHD. And this understanding of us as someone who need medication, who gets into the medical system, who has a diagnosis and label in the DSM, in the Diagnostic and Statistic Manual of Mental Disorders, might make us think that if we need medication, if you need to see a psychiatrist, then it must be because we are ill, we are broken, we need fixing. It's because we have a mental condition. And as well, when we apply for accommodation at work, we need to identify as disabled to get some accommodations. And no one likes to think of themselves as disabled or ill or disordered, especially not mentally disordered. And here again, the reasoning in many of us goes, if we are disordered, maybe our positive features and strengths that the ADHD advocacy community touts so much are not so important after all. What counts, what matters is the deficit, the failing, the difficulties. That's why we seek support. And this negative way of thinking very often has very serious consequences. The stigma associated with the idea of a mental illness and disorder often lead a lot of people to stop in treatment and stop seeking support. And we know how that unmedicated ADHD can lead to a host of problems and comorbidities, including anxiety, depression, and higher rates of mortality. So this stigma has very, very serious consequences. And Dr. Edward Hallowell, a leading expert on ADHD, summarizes this idea really, really well in his book, Delivered from Destruction. Here's a quote from him. The traditional medical model emphasizes pathology, what is wrong and sick and in need of remediation. However, when applied to the mind, this approach can do a good deal of damage. The kidney doesn't care if you call it sick, but the mind does. If you tell a person that she has a mental disorder, you create a mental disorder, not only the patient, but in those who love her as well. The disorder is fear. Chronic fear holds more people back in life than any other mental infirmity. How ironic and wrong that the mind I have a bit of the quote missing here, but it says basically how ironic and wrong that those who are supposed to support us inflict so much damage. Sorry about that. And as Hallowell puts it, the stigma that comes with a diagnosis is not only in our mind, it's also in the mind of people around us. And a lot of newly diagnosed people complain that they feel like they've become a different person in the eyes of those around them. They fear losing respect from co-worker, being thought of less of, being dismissed because they have their diagnosis. And of course, these affect the way they perceive themselves as well. So while the diagnosis for a lot of people opens the door to accommodations at work that are extremely helpful, there are also clients who have managers who use the diagnosis as an excuse to blame them to blame mistakes on their ADHD and dismiss the person even more. But even when we receive support, we might still feel ambivalent about receiving that support because we might think of this as special treatment that we don't really deserve. And again, we might see it as attached to these labels of disability and illness and deficit that we resist because we want to feel whole and not broken and not in need of fixing. So today, I want to see how we can dissolve the stigma of a diagnosis and reap the full benefits of that he can bring, the benefits of understanding our brain, of embracing our full potential, of working in the way that suits us and that taps into our strengths, and asking for the help we need. So how we can reap those benefits without these negative feelings. And part of the solution to that, to overcoming these negative feelings, processing them and pass beyond them, is coaching, of course, which helps clients understand themselves with self-compassion, understand their brain, really tap into their strengths. But another important aspect of going beyond those feelings is understanding what drives the stigma and understanding conceptually that we really don't need these negative stigma attached to the notion of ADHD, disability, or a mental condition. And this is where I'm going to wear my researcher's hat and talk about neurodiversity and what these levels mean for us. Neurodiversity is a term that everyone have heard about. It's been, of course, discussed a lot, but not always at the level of a more sophisticated understanding. So neurodiversity is a term that emerged in the late 90s within the online community of autistic people. And it emerged online on an email list called Independent Living, and in what was sort of satire of the way neurotypical stigmatized autistic people, that sort of reversed the mirror on neurotypical, that was called the Institute for the Study of Neurologically Typical, ISNT. So the term neurodiversity was then popularized by the autistic sociologist Judy Singer in 1998 in her thesis. And these first neurodiversity advocates argued for the recognition of autism as a variation in cognitive style and against the default pathologizing of what they saw as just normal variation in way of thinking and behaving, with distinctive strengths and distinctive weaknesses, like everyone else has strengths and weaknesses or deficits. So the term neurodiversity refers to the variety of cognitive styles and brain functioning, a variety that we should strive to preserve, just like we strive to preserve biodiversity. And like biodiversity is beneficial for the entire ecosystem, we should strive for more diversity in living things. Also, neurodiversity is beneficial. So all the entire society, the humanity, gains from a variety of cognitive styles. And those with atypical cognitive styles are referred to as neurominorities or neurodivergent. And even though initially the concept of neurodiversity and neurodivergence was developed in the autistic spaces to refer to autism, then it's been extended to other conditions like ADHD, dyspraxia, dyslexia, dyscalculia, Tourette syndrome. And recently there's discussion about extending it to other disorders such as, or conditions such as schizophrenia and depression. So for the neurodiversity advocates, a neurodivergence is not an impairment or a pathology, but a distinctive cognitive style that is beneficial to all of us. And if there is suffering on the part of the neuro minority or the neurodivergent person, this is not because they have some deficits per se, but because the particular set of strengths that they have is not really supported and is not really valued, while a lot of emphasis is posed on the skills that these people lack more, and there's a lot of punishing and looking down on those who don't excel in certain skills, would happen to be those that are more difficult for neurodivergent people. Now, you may ask, if ADHD is a normal variation in cognitive style, then why are we struggling so much? Why are we taking medication? Are we not just taking advantage of the system because we are a bit quirky and we should just get over with it? Which is something that a lot of people with ADHD might have heard from others when in response to their disclosing their diagnosis. This sort of response, well, ADHD is just a fad. A lot of people are like that. Are we not all a bit ADHD? So it's just a way of being, personality trait. The short answer to this question is no, you're not taking advantage of the system. You should not stop taking your medication, and you should not stop getting the support you need, because ADHD can be extremely debilitating if unmanaged. And it's true that the difficulties we encounter might be largely due to society, which doesn't accommodate us enough, to stigma and to marginalization. And it is because of these that advocacy is so important, and that we should all strive to make our society more neuro-inclusive at every level. But the fact remains that as long as society doesn't change drastically enough, we will still struggle. And we still might count as disabled because it's the society that causes the disablement. It's the way our environment is structured. And according to the biosocial model of the disability that informs the neurodiversity approach, you can be disabled even if there is nothing wrong with you, because the environment in which you live is not suited to you. And if, even if there isn't anything intrinsically wrong with you, you may still need extra support. You may still need accommodations. You may still need medication if that's the case. Because existing and thriving in an environment that is not designed for us is very hard. And in order to do that, we need all the support we can get. And we need that as we fight to remove the stigma around ADHD and neurodivergence, and about labels like disability and mental illness. And as we change the society to make it so that we don't need to make ad hoc accommodations for every single person with ADHD, because these spaces in which we live are already more inclusive and welcoming. I hope this was helpful for you, and I'm looking forward to seeing comments and questions if you have any in the comments. And thank you very much for watching.